Welcome back to the Talking Archive. I'm Josh Jacobs. And last time we were talking with Chuck McKibben, and we were talking kind of off the air between shows about his time in New York and the Crazy Eddie commercials. For those of you who had cable back in the 1980s and 90s, his advertising was oftentimes on WOR Channel 9, which is now WWR Channel 9. It was an RKO station, and eventually I think it was I think it's now a My Network affiliate, My TV or whatever that's called.
Me TV?
Yeah, Me TV.
Yeah.
Me TV. Oh, yeah, Me TV. Right. Yeah, that too. With all these sub channels these days. But tell us about how you had this great story about being mistaken for Tim Conway, was it?
Yes. Well, I'm riding the subways back from why was I riding subways late at night back to Queens from Manhattan? I don't even remember. But I'm on a train that's nearly empty, and a young black fellow comes, and though he could pick any seat on that car, he looks at me and he sits down right next to me. Okay, this is a little unusual. Even if it was a white guy, it didn't matter. Why are you sitting next to me when you could be in 100 other seats? So he nudges me and says, yo, I know who you are. I said, oh, I guess I do too. Something clever. And he says, you famous. You on TV. I said, well, I actually was, because I was doing some commercials at that time for a place called the House of Audio in New Jersey. They were running on New York television, though, and going head-to-head in battle with this guy, Eddie Antar, known as Crazy Eddie. And he had these wild commercials where a spokesperson who we were led to believe was Crazy Eddie. His real name was Jerry Carroll, and he was a former WPIX late-night disc jockey. But he got hired by Jerry to be this wild and crazy guy who would wave his arms at the camera in a fisheye lens, knocking over boxes like he was in the store, and he's knocking the boxes over, and he says, come to Crazy Eddie, he'll beat any price, come to Crazy Eddie. And so basically, we mocked his commercials because they were all over the air in New York City. You could not escape them watching TV. But he says, you famous. Okay, I'm thinking he saw a Crazy Eddie commercial. He says, you Tim Conway. You on the Caribou Net show. Well, I'm not going to disagree with this fella. He was a nice enough man. He wasn't threatening or anything. But you don't know who you're going to meet on a New York subway late at night. So I played along, and I said, yes, I just came back from a taping. I was being interviewed by, I probably threw out a name of somebody local. And, he was pleased to meet me. He was thrilled to have met me. What's she like? What's she like? Said she's very sweet, very sweet. Actually, I did attend a taping of the Burnett Show when I was still in Hollywood. I tried to get to 2 or 3 tapings of, what did I see? I saw the Monty Hall at Let's Make a Deal. Uh-huh. And I dressed up as a disc jockey with a lot of 45 singles glued to my clothing. Didn't get picked, didn't get rich. Oh, man. But anyway, New York at night. Well, I rode the subway because my night job, my survival job, working at that Doubles, the disco, would sometimes be home at 5 a.m. It was an after-hours club. Nobody said, we got to stop serving at 2 a.m. No. These are rich people. They get to do what they want. So I might get off work at 4, and now I got to get down to the docks at the tip of Manhattan and get on this ferry, which at that hour is only running once an hour. So you just hated to see that thing pulling away because it meant you're going to have to kill time for the next hour on a wooden bench. Very uncomfortable. And there are some derelicts here, who are not the most smelly people on earth, or non-smelly. But anyway, the experience of doing that, New York had its negatives too, but at least we knew there were no earthquakes. Like, I understand there's 5,000 a year, most of them minor. But I do remember in Southern California that there was an earthquake one day in our tower. We were up there on the 12th floor. Mel Blanc says, hey, is the building moving? And there's no point of reference if you don't have a hanging lamp. I discovered that early on. If you don't have something that hangs from the ceiling that can sway, you don't really know if you're moving or not.
Hmm.
Your inner ear tells you there's movement, but you can't see it by looking out a window. It might be too subtle. I also lived through a couple that were like big shocks, like boom, and people were nonchalant about, oh, that was a quake, that was a quickie, and then there'd be aftershocks and all that. So anyway, I did leave Southern California, but not before meeting some really interesting people at the Mel Blanc studio. Oh my gosh. And also at the Mel Blanc School of Voice. I did want to mention that it's totally unknown today, but it was covered by TV Guide that year. Mel Blanc started a school for voiceover. Had you been in Southern California at that time, you could have studied with the Grand Master himself in his cartoon voice class. Incredible. It was a group class, maybe 10 or 12 people each time, who had paid $300. Many of them didn't even want to be a performer. They were there because they wanted to meet Mel and be called by first name by Mel Blanc and be able to call him by first name. And they told me that. Well, I was from the time that I met Mel, and here's how that worked. I was at that school from its first night in operation. I met this wonderful gentleman, if I may tell my California story.
Yes.
Having gone out to California, I stayed at this lousy rat and roach-infested flop house called the Cine Lodge, which is no longer there. But it was cheap enough by the week, and I could afford to stay there. It had hot and cold running cockroaches, and it had a bathroom down at the end of the hall. Very nice shared bathroom. I wasn't about to get in that tub. And it was air conditioned. You could open a window. So heated, I don't know, but it did have a hot plate. So you could actually cook something, a can of soup or something. And then it had either a bed or a couch, whatever you wanted to call it, but it was just a flat piece of foam on a couple of legs. So I put up with that because I didn't have much money to spend, and I went looking for a job. First job I found was within a week. Altophonic Programming, a company that made background music tapes, hired me as an audio engineer to assemble elevator music tapes from albums. My job was to transfer them from vinyl with ultra precision. I mean, editing out any snap, crackle, or pop in the brand new disc. And we cleaned them with a special European cleaning machine before putting them on custom-made Sony turntable with a straight tracking arm. I mean, these guys were crazy obsessed with quality for background music. But it was their job. It was SRP Production, Sulky. I don't even remember the name, but I do remember Altophonic.
Oh, okay.
And it was $100 a week, and I worked there from 7 a.m. to 3. Okay, I'm employed now in Southern California. And every day I could walk up and down the length of Hollywood Boulevard between the Chinese Theater and up at the other end was Hollywood and Vine. So I did that. After work at 3, I would look for other recording studios to work at. And I found one at Hollywood and Vine in the famous Taft Building, the first skyscraper of Los Angeles at 13 stories. It was a skyscraper. No other tall buildings were there. And it was the epicenter of Hollywood. All the studios wanted to build as near to that building as they could because the stars had their offices there, their business offices. I mean, a Rudolph Valentino, you want to find his business manager and where he collects his checks and all that? It's Hollywood and Vine. And that's why it's the center of Hollywood, or was. So now I see, with no internet to look up and find out anything about anything, I just looked at the directory, and it said it said Magnasonic. I'm getting Altophonic and Magnasonic confused. Programming, and I go up to the 3rd floor by the stairs, and here's this icing glass window. Those are those translucent windows with hand-lettered identification on them. And I opened the door and introduced myself, and here's this fella named Rod Thibault. Thibault, pronounced Thibault. He's sitting behind an old wooden desk with his shoes up on it. He's got a 6-pack of Budweiser, and he's sipping on a Bud, and his shoes have holes in them. And I know this because he's got his feet on the desk. He's got kind of a southern accent. He says, well, what can I do for you, young feller? I said, hi, I'm Chuck McKibben. I'm an audio engineer and disc jockey from the East. I'm trying to make it in Hollywood. He says, oh, welcome, welcome. You know, I record all the big stars here in commercials. Sure you do. He's got some black and white photos in little crappy frames. It looks like he furnished this place at Goodwill. Seriously, it's a dump.
Wow.
But I don't see a studio. You had to go outside into the hallway and enter a different door to get to the studio. Well, he tells me that he worked with Elvis Presley at Sun Records, but that he had a horrible accident. Something rammed through his guitar picking arm and he couldn't use it to play anymore. So he became an audio engineer. But he says, see that picture there? That's me and Scotty Moore and the other boys from Elvis's band at Sun. Well, it could have been. You know, I didn't know. Who knew what Elvis's sidemen looked like? Mm-hmm. So I said, okay, that's cool. He says, you want to see the studio? I built it by hand, all the equipment except the tape recorders. He did. This man had worked for NASA. He was a genius, but weird, eccentric. And the strangest thing was he had black, pointy teeth. Ooh. His teeth had been ground down. I later found out, not that day, but they'd been ground down to put caps on. His dentist told him, you need caps. And so he got his teeth ground down for them to be fitted, and then he ran out of money. So he sipped the beer. I was told later by his daughter, many years later, that the reason he sipped the beer was it was an analgesic. It deadened the pain in his teeth. Okay, but he didn't have the money to finish the job. But now he brags about all the big stars who love to record in his studio. But it's a dump. I'm walking across the room, hearing cracking as I step on tape reels. And there's trash everywhere. And it's like the windows are boarded up with whatever scraps of drywall he could find or cardboard or whatever. I got good a mic, a real good mic. I think it might have been a Neumann. But he's also got some pictures of people on the wall there. He says, you see that man? He's going to be real famous someday. I'm his champion. I think this man is absolutely brilliant. I said, oh, who is he? He's a black gentleman with a bald head, with a big smile, big friendly grin. He said, that man's called Scatman. His name is Scatman Crothers, and he's going to be a major star.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, sure, right. A 60-ish looking black man is going to be a big movie star. He says, yes, he is. Oh, yeah, he's destined. It's going to happen. He also predicted KHJ will play country music in a few years. I thought, that's ridiculous. It's the biggest rock station on the West Coast. And soon enough, of course, they went country.
They did for only about a year and a half. It's kind of funny. The manager they had at the time who did that was Neil Rockoff, which was the perfect name because he took the rock off of KHJ.
I get my rocks off. Okay, we won't go there. So anyway, he's got a record cutting machine. He's got a Scully record cutting machine, like they would have in any great studio like Capitol, which was just up the street from the Taft Building there at Hollywood and Vine. So he says, oh, yeah, I cut albums for Capitol. Okay, now this is getting a little ridiculous because they have this fabulous world-class studio. And you cut albums for them? Oh, yeah, when they have excess, too much work to do, they farm it out to me. Son of a gun, he was doing that. Oh, my God. He hand-built his board. He said, they don't make them good enough to meet my specs, so I have to build them myself. He was probably right. They probably had higher specs than any. But he was this strange guy with these strange teeth. But he did know everybody. One day he says, I can't drive anymore. So when you meet me here, we never go out in my car anywhere because I don't have a license anymore. But I need to get to James Whitmore's house in Malibu because I'm installing a $50,000 sound system for him. Big movie star of the day. Mm-hmm. People today wouldn't know him except maybe from Oklahoma, that movie. But anyway,
he did the Miracle Grow commercials back in the 80s, 90s.
And so he was a very big star in the 40s, the 50s, and so forth. And we go out to Malibu, and he's in the front saying, hey, Rod, how you doing, buddy? Hey, come put my stereo in. And we spend the afternoon installing the stereo. He does know stars. And he would drop names of all these people who just loved him. And then one day, after working a few weeks as a studio bum with him for no money at all, of course, but I wanted to learn from him, he says, Mel Blanc is starting a school for voice. I said, you're kidding. He says, yeah, I built his studio. Sure. And it's going to be in a church building. A church building. Now, Mel's Jewish, but it's going to be in a church building in their classroom. They have a classroom building and also a stage, a theater. I said, okay, when is this? He says, tonight. Can you drive me there? I said, I can meet Mel Blanc. Oh, yeah, and his son, too, Noel. They'll be opening tonight. It's the grand opening. And I built their studio, so I'm invited, and I can bring anybody. I said, you couldn't keep me away. Come, let me run home, put on my very best clothes that are clean, and take you there. And it was like 7 p.m. or something like that. So we rushed to Westwood. I don't remember the name of the church. It's somewhere in my knowledge, but I don't remember. But anyway, there's Noel and Mel Blanc at the front door greeting their guests. I am introduced to them with the biggest, grandest introduction. This guy is fabulous. He knows everything about audio recording. He's my, protege. He's from the East, is Chuck McKibben. Noel looks at me and says, well, young man, if you're half as qualified as you sound, like our friend says, we have a job for you tonight. What? Yeah, the engineer didn't show up to run Mel's tape recorder. And by the way, that's what he always called his dad. Not Dad's tape recorder, but Mel's. Now, I never called my father John, ever. But I called him Dad or Pop or, whatever. But he called his dad Mel almost all the time, even right in front of him. So, okay, Mel's tape recorder, simple little Ampex 600. Do you know how to run those? Oh, sure. I'm from an extensive radio background, about 9 years in radio, sure. So they started me there at $10 a night every Monday night. And $10 bought you a lot of stuff back then, believe me. You could buy a week's groceries for $10 in 1972. This is 72, I think the spring. And so it worked out. I met Hannah and Barbara from that company. They were there to celebrate. I met Gary Owens. I met other voice people. Jesse White, the Maytag repairman, was there. People who you knew the faces of, like Peter Leeds, who worked with Bob Hope for about 20 years. You knew him from television. You'd seen him in a million shows. People like that. And, Frizz Freeling. And I was told his name is not Fritz. It's Frizz. Frizz Freeling from the great Termite Terrace. He's one of the greatest animators ever. And they're all here to celebrate Mel opening the school. It's $300 for 6 nights. And I met him, these animators from WB. So these were the people on my TV set, back in Ohio. I was meeting the real people of my TV. And I was just thrilled beyond belief. It's all a blur in my memory. I don't remember what happened that night exactly. But they gave me a permanent job. After a while, they let me teach. They let me teach how to make a demo tape. I'm not kidding. I couldn't believe that they were entrusting that to me. But how to make a 7.5 IPS, 3-inch reel demo, to send around, because that's how it was done then. Mel had a 5-minute reel-to-reel demo tape. I later got hold of the demo tape of a fellow named Bill Baldwin. It was on a 3-inch reel. He was the announcer on the Beverly Hillbillies. And I worked with his son, Bill Baldwin Jr., at the studio, because after a couple of months with the school, they said, we want you to come to work with us at the studio in Beverly Hills. Wow. I've not only got a job with Mel, which is absolutely going to be on my resume from now on, but now it's a full-time job. We want to make you the assistant to a very nice man by the name of Hanson. Okay. He's our studio manager, and he's really good, but he can teach you the ropes. Wow. Okay. So now I'm reporting to work no longer to altophonic programming, but I'm going to take the little trip on the Sunset Strip into Beverly Hills and work there. And oh my God, it wasn't just Mel who was there. I soon learned that many Hollywood luminaries of that day were close friends with Mel and could choose to work at that studio if they wanted to, because it was a world-class facility. And so I can rattle off the names pretty quick of some of the first people I met. There's Jack Benny, sweetest man in Hollywood, nice, wonderful guy, beyond wonderful, just the sweetest guy. There's Kirk Douglas, Spartacus himself.
Oh, yeah.
There's Casey Kasem on the voice side. There's Gary Owens, who's working with the Mel Blanc studio on a syndicated show. You have Vincent Price, the horror show king, all those Edgar Allan Poe movies, and so forth. Just a litany of these great people. Well, okay. So I learned the ropes, and then Lee Hansen gets an offer from Watermark to go work on Casey Kasem's American Top 40 and make more money than Mel could afford. It was kind of he was on a tight budget because that real estate was really crazy expensive. Working on the 12th floor of a bank building in Beverly Hills, in the epicenter of Beverly Hills. So I made the equivalent of maybe today's $25,000, $30,000 a year job. But it was just enough to get a small apartment in Beverly Hills. Well, you couldn't. No, I had to live in Hollywood. I stayed in Hollywood. But anyway, I'm meeting and working with all these stars. Couple of the experiences were pretty crazy.
This is the Talking Archive. I'm Josh Jacobs. Follow us on Instagram at JoshDJ57. That's JoshDJ57. Also, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and tell your friends to do so as well. We are talking with Chuck McKibben, the author of the book Mel Blanc, The Voice of Bugs Bunny, ... and me. Inside the studio with Hollywood's Man of 1,000 Voices, and next time, Chuck shares stories about working with the man originally known as Casey at the mic.